Now this is Naomi Wolf, the well-known American feminist who has, written many books about oppressive American men, but finds nothing but praise for women in Islamic countries who wear niqab. But this is the essence of the issue. How do we define liberalism as also a matter of participation and a matter of responsibility and a matter of showing yourself in a public space? Now, that matters, and we're not thinking these things through. I do have one great thing is that I went to the University of Chicago when political philosophy then was taken very seriously. And we need to get away from what is called political science and talk more about political philosophy. I mean, I think that I had the benefit of having a solid education in the classics from Plato and even the pre-Socratics all the way through Heidegger. And I've read them all, and I know it all. I don't know it all. It's impossible to know it all. I am a know-it-all. But I've at least read it and thought about it. And part of the problem we have is that most of my contemporaries haven't. So when you talk about Locke, you talk about contract theory, you say, I sometimes get, one of the things I do at the journal is I hire our interns. I ask them, what's the difference between Locke and Rousseau? This is a wonderful interview question because I can easily, immediately get rid of like half the applicants, actually 90% of the applicants. But we should know what the difference between Locke and Rousseau is. We should know what Hobbes is talking about. I mean, this is the origin of political order in the West, at least in the United States. These are the ideas that inform the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when we speak about the pursuit of happiness, let's ask ourselves what happiness is, and might it not also be inflected with an Aristotelian idea of happiness, which includes a concept of virtue and human life as the fulfillment of certain virtues which lead to actual happiness as opposed to pleasure. These are things we might think about sometimes.
Sure, go ahead. It's the point that you just made with the example of women and the French liberalism and the American liberalism, Canadian quote-unquote liberalism that we have been struggling with, that women have the right to put this on. Well, this is not liberalism. This is the result of 40th century of multiculturalism. It is in the shocking circumstances of France after 1990, when the Algerian terrorism became a real problem in the streets of Paris and others, that the French started thinking about this, and they have come to this conclusion. It is multicultural in the West, and France was under that too. And it is this, again, this shocking circumstances that France is rediscovering its ethos and took the stand that it took during the Sarkozy period. But we in North America, corrupted and destroyed by multiculturalism, say all cultures are equal. Remember, liberalism is about individual rights and a rule of law. It is not anarchy. Freedom is not anarchy. It is within the rule of law. And it's about individual rights. But we have set aside the question of individual rights, and we have redefined it, and we say all cultures are equal. Now, who says all cultures are equal? Where does this idea of all cultures are equal come in? All men are equal, born equal. This is the question of, again, the Declaration of Independence, or going back to the French Revolution and so on, the rights of man. All men are created equal, or whatever will be the correct language at this time. So as an individual, we are created equal. You have no greater right as a white man, in that fundamental sense of natural right, than I have or I don't have as a brown man. But here comes Pierre Trudeau and the great thinkers of multiculturalism in this country and other countries who came around and said all cultures are equal. Now, I come from India. How is it that the Indian culture at one time would put a woman, a widow, to burn on the pyre of her husband, equal from the culture that was British, that said, that if you're going to do that, then I'm going to hang each one of you. Today we have democracy, the world's largest democracy in India. Something goes back to Napier. Something goes back to Macaulay. Something goes back to that entire period. And it is now the West going back, and that's where the abandonment is coming out. It is a complete toxin of multiculturalism that is destroying the West.
Last week in Toronto, I was on Steve Pakin's show last Thursday. It was on the topic of gay rights internationally, and it was me against everybody else, and I made the point that perhaps gay pride marches shouldn't have assless chaps and people running around nude when our colleagues and friends and brothers and sisters are being executed in Iran and elsewhere, and that was not well received. Why not?
Well, you know, I had once, just apropos what you just said, a few years ago I went to see this really, what I think is an out-and-out anti-Semitic short play by an avant-garde British playwright named Carol Churchill called Seven Jewish Children, which, the thesis of which is that the Jews who were persecuted by the Nazis are now Nazi-like persecutors of Palestinians. So it's a 10-minute play. It was read on stage on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And the curator, or the MC for the evening, was Tony Kushner, well-known American playwright who best known for his novel, his play Angels in America, which is a play about, you know, it's a gay-themed play. And so, of course, everyone was applauding, this play, and Kushner spoke and said, well, this is not really about Judaism, it's about, the human story, et cetera, et cetera. And I raised my hand. I said, Mr. Kushner, it's incredibly courageous of you to bring this very controversial play to the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I mean, I know that took guts. But when are you going to stage Angels in America at the Islamic University of Gaza? And I was hissed by the audience. And Kushner sort of dismissed me from the stage, and then he came out after this evening was over, this evening like this. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what I mean is that the Palestinians with whom you are so sedulously fellow traveling would kill you in 1 minute. Even if you didn't stage Angels in America, because you're a gay communist American. So gay, you're dead. Communist, you're dead. American, you're dead. So what kind of liberalism is it that finds itself consistently fellow traveling with the enemies of the very values you purport to hold dear, at least when it comes to the West? And how is it that we have a liberalism, quote unquote, okay, a kind of a debauched liberalism that now amounts to a form of extended apology for modern day religious fanaticism and totalitarianism? Why does that happen? And these are the questions that I don't think modern liberals ask themselves, or ask themselves in an intelligent way. There are a few exceptions. There are people like Paul Berman, there was the late Christopher Hitchens, who were asking these questions. But if you read The Nation, or you read Harper's, or all these crap magazines, you'd hardly know there's a problem with, on the one hand, apologizing for, say, Vladimir Putin, and on the other hand, extolling, I don't know, gay marriage rights in South Carolina, or something like that.
It's frustrating. It was a very frustrating panel. We have a couple of microphones, so if people want to ask questions, please line up. One last question for me. Two-part question. What about Obama? We've got 2 more years of Obama, so what's going to happen in those 2 more years? And the Republicans don't seem to be that hot either. So what's going to happen in the States? It seems to get depressing at times. Or am I wrong?
Do you want me to take
Yeah,
that?
you can start. I think I'm wrong.
Niels Bohr, the Danish physicist, once said, prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. A profound comment, because there's also the old Soviet joke that under socialism, the past can never be predicted. So I had written a book called, that I started writing 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, at least I signed the contract 2 years ago. It's called America in Retreat. The subtitle is The New Isolationism and the Coming Global Disorder. see, the book publishes in November, and I feel like my prophecies are coming true a little too soon in terms of the marketing campaign. The world should go to hell right around the time of publication, not 2 months prior to it. But what you're starting to see is what I call suprasystemic disorder. You know, there are two kinds of disorder, or let me put it this way. There are two kinds of unpredictability. You know, who will be the next president of the United States? Answer, nobody knows. Real answer, Hillary. But in theory, nobody knows, right? But we know there will be another president, just as we know there will be a future prime minister of Canada. This is unpredictability, but it happens within a system. And there are all kinds of unpredictabilities which happen within a system. We know there's going to be a terrible earthquake or typhoon somewhere in the world. We don't know where, but we do know that there are all these engines of relief that will come to these systems of Filipinos or Pakistanis or whatever. But then what happens when unpredictability starts attacking the system itself? When states start dissolving? I mean, next week, the United Kingdom, as we've known it for the past 307 years, may begin to dissolve. Syria is dissolving. Ukraine may dissolve. So we're starting to see systems themselves crumble, and that's a very difficult kind of unpredictability because we just don't know how things are going to play out. The very architecture starts to fall apart. You might say unpredictability within the system is like stuff happening in your house. The house is untidy, you have to clean it up. Unpredictability of the system is stuff happening to your house. Your floorboard starts to rot, the roof caves in, you know, your toilet explodes. I think we're entering this kind of world of suprasystemic unpredictability, and it's happening because we have a president whose basic idea is that less America makes for a better world. That as the American footprint recedes, the world becomes a better place. So I don't see a real campaign unfolding in Iraq and Syria. What I see is a campaign that manages to be just enough to hopefully make the problem recede politically for the president. I don't see a real solution to